Afternoon. And very much a warm welcome from my side. My name is Arno Wicki. I'm the Vice Director of Swiss Development Corporation. And I'm very pleased to be here with you. I guess the mountain people, are meeting here over lunch, but we have an exciting topic that we will discuss today in detail. Dear guests, dear panelists, it's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Swiss government. Thank you for joining us today at the side event that we organized jointly with the Government of India and UNESCO. This is one of those moments during the global platform for disaster risk reduction where we have the opportunity to focus on the concrete meaning and implementation of risk management. Here and now on a highly relevant and moving topic. The topic is the glacial lake outburst flood hazard modeling and risk management. It sounds very technical, but if you look at what's currently going on, including here in Switzerland with this glacier-related incident in the valleys, it is obvious that it's very concrete and not just a technical issue. Besides, of course, the disasters in Switzerland, we also witness at even larger scale disasters in the Himalayas and in other mountainous regions. In addition, we have the International Year of the Glaciers. Some of you may have been at the conference in Dushanbe, where similar topics have been discussed. From our perspective, we obviously think that glacial lake outburst floods hazards are a highly relevant topic. It's a timely moment to delve into also the concrete experience that we have. Some of these hazards are increasing due to climate change. Many are becoming more consequential simply because more people are now living in areas exposed to these risks. For example, as towns expand into risk areas. One particular phenomenon that exemplifies the dynamic is the growing threat of glacial lake outburst floods, or GLOFs, driven by the warming climate. GLOFs rank among the largest floods recorded in the human history. Today, an estimated 15 million people around the world are exposed to these risks. One such GLOF that will receive special attention in our discussion today has happened in Sikkim in 2023 at the site where the SDC-supported project, together with the national and local Indian authorities present here today, is implementing an integrated risk management approach. It not only destroyed a hydropower dam, but also claimed far too many lives. In facing such complex risks, we at the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation are fortunate to draw not only upon long-standing Swiss experience in hazard management, but also in strong international partnerships. So I'm very much looking forward to today's discussion, where we will explore what it takes to ensure effective coordination and collaboration, and to prioritizing the empowerment of the people most at risk. Let's begin with three presentations presented by distinguished guests. I would like to welcome Dr. Krishna Vatsa on my right, member of the Indian National Disaster Management Authority, who has more than 30 years of experience in disaster risk reduction and recovery in India and internationally. Then I also would like to present Dr. Simon Allen, a geoscientist and senior researcher at the University of Geneva and Zurich, to my far left. He works at the Science Policy Interface on Climate Change and Natural Hazards in vulnerable mountain regions, including the ones that we discussed today. Then finally, I also would like to present my colleague Miriam McHowell, here, head of SDC's Climate, Disaster Risk Reduction and Environment Program. She also has a large experience in mountainous areas, and she was also working for several reasons at ICIMOD, an organization that you probably all know. And she is also one of the co-organizer of today's global platform. So with that, without further ado, I would like to give the word to Dr. Watsa.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I must thank the SDC for having organized this wonderful side event. It brings out a very important discussion on GLOF risks and how we need to deal with it. In a very short time, this risk has magnified for us, and it has presented a huge challenge. And I would like to make a presentation on that. But before that, I would like to thank the SDC for having initiated this technical cooperation and helped us look at the risk in multiple ways and understand how do we go about setting up the early warning system and initiate mitigation measures for the risk reduction. Glacial lakes are which form due to the recession of the glaciers are very, very important. They constitute very important risk for us, and it's very difficult largely due to their location. They are located at 5,000 meter and above. There are many reasons, of course, why we are seeing more and more formation of the glacial lakes. But one thing we could say that it's we have an inventory of glacial lakes, but it's always difficult to monitor the health of these lakes, largely due to the location. We have a large number of lakes, all of them above 5,000 meter, and physically visiting them or monitoring them also through satellites on a continuous basis, they pose their own technical and human challenges. Yet we have started this process, and I would say that we had a big setback when the GLOF event occurred, causing a huge loss. But we have actually pulled together our resources, and we have invested in risk mitigations, and that is what I'm going to present today in a very brief presentation. So it all started, of course, we have been monitoring GLOFs for quite some time, but in a very visible way, it started with a joint expedition of the SDC and the Government of India and the Sikkim government. And Simon Allen participated in that mission, and that we sent a large team to South Lonak and Sakocho for assessing the risk, also looking at how do we monitor the lakes, how do we set up the camera, how do we understand the depth of the water, how much water is there. So there were different kinds of scientific investigations that were to be undertaken. So this expedition, which happened in September 23, was the point of beginning for both our collaboration as well as for understanding the risk of GLOF in detail. See, these are some of the instruments being set up there. These are cameras and probe meters and all those things which will provide us, which have provided us the data. So these are the things that have been done there. So some of the photographs you can see, again, very remote and unmanned, and it's a challenge to maintain these equipment there, and sometimes these equipments go out of order, and that really becomes. So these are the kind of data that we receive. Here, look at this. And so various parameters are being observed, and we are getting this data on a very regular basis, daily basis. So these are some of the photographs that we receive from the cameras that have been installed there. So look at this progression of the recession of the glaciers. Look at how it looked in 1962 and how it looked in 2023, how the glaciers have been receding, how the lakes are being formed, has been formed, and how the size and dimension of the lake has increased over a period of time. So it's a very, very good illustration of the magnification or the increase in the risk, as the lakes are increasing, lake is increasing in the dimension, the risks are also getting magnified. So this is the photograph immediately after the GLOF incident. So the second thing is the GLOF occurrence, the GLOF event that happened on October 3, 2023, where the moraine breached and we had a large scale water flowing downstream. And this is the photograph that you can see immediately after the GLOF occurrence. And this was a huge event, huge disaster for us, for the country, for the state of Sikkim, killed more than 200 people. It and also washed away a big dam. A lot of people lost their houses. So a very and it threw out the many tourism-based enterprises out of business for more than a few months. So it has been a big disaster for the state. We have conducted detailed assessment of the disaster, and we have looked at all the sectors that have been impacted. So this is the South Lonak Lake, 6 October 2023. You can see the yellow line and the green line. The yellow line was that indicates the lake before the disaster, and the green line shows the lake after the disaster. So how the lake has shrunk after the water has gone out. So following this event, and of course with the kind of insights that we have gained from this expedition and all the studies that have been carried out, we started assessing the risks of all the glacial lakes across the four states and 2 union territories. We have a large Himalayan territory, and we have a large number of glacial lakes across these states. So we started looking at the high-risk glacial lakes, medium-risk glacial lakes, and some of them are categorized unclassified. So some of them are transboundary, some of them are located within the Indian territory. We have also looked at the size of the lakes, how they have expanded. So these are several agencies are involved in the risk assessment. We have the NRSC, which is a space agency. They have identified for more than 44 glacial lakes, which have more than 50 hectares. Then NRSC also looked at the 15 lakes which are high-risk lakes. CWC again has, Central Water Commission has also monitored them, and it has been monitoring the lakes based on the increase in size. Then we have another CDAC. CDAC is basically monitoring the lakes on the basis of satellite images. So they are looking at and the ground survey. So they have identified 155 lakes. So all these multiple agencies involved with the assessment of lakes have given us some idea about the categorizing and there is another organization, GSI. And finally, we have the Swiss Development Corporation also engaged with the risk assessment. So we have got some data from them as well. So this is how. So we are looking at all the three basins. This is the Ganga Basin, and then we have the Indus Basin, and then we have the Brahmaputra Basin. All of them have been looking at the glacial lakes, and all the agencies actually. And this is how we have started. We have given code to all the glacial lakes here. And then we have started noting their all the parameters, location, longitude, latitude, area, and everything. And then we are looking at how these risks have been perceived by different agencies. So there are 4 agencies which have considered the 7 glacial lakes at high risk, and then there are 3 agencies which have looked at 18 glacial lakes at high risk. So this is how we are looking at all the glacial lakes. So there are altogether 490 glacial lakes, and which the 188 out of which are in Indian territory, and then we are categorizing them in A, which is a higher risk, B, which is medium risk, and C, which are in lower risk. And then there is the residual category of unclassified glacial lakes. So we have categorized these lakes, and then there are other lakes which are in transboundary areas. So based on the risk assessment that we have conducted, we have now developed a national program for GLOF risk assessment and mitigation. So these are the states that actually have got the assistance for mitigation program of the GLOF. Himachal Pradesh, again 537 glacial lakes altogether, Uttarakhand 347 out of them, and Sikkim 733, Arunachal, some of them are transboundary. So we are looking at all of them, and we are identifying the most important glacial lakes on which to focus attention. And we are actually right now allocating about $30 million for assessing the risks. These are the components where we are looking at inventorizing the lakes, conducting risk and vulnerability assessment, setting up monitors, sensors, early warning systems. What are the structural and non-structural mitigation measures that can be undertaken, and then preparing the downstream communities. How do we work with the communities and develop the program? So this is what we are right now doing on a summer 2024 geological and bathymetry survey for 42 high-risk A lakes and installation of monitoring stations at these lakes. So within 1 year, we plan to have some early warning system for a few lakes. And by the end of summer 2025, we would like to set up EWS for all the high-risk lakes. Of course, it is taking a lot of time. So the first thing that we are doing here is that we are conducting physical visit and reconnaissance of all the lakes. So all the states, actually, they have organized expeditions. So these are the expeditions that we want all the lakes to be visited. And each visit to each lake is actually an expedition. So Sikkim, 19 expeditions have happened so far. We are visiting all of them. We are, and so this is some expeditions, how much time it takes and all that. So this is what we are doing right now. So this is what we are doing, and you would see how from the expedition to the right now, we have conducted so many activities and actually taken it to a certain scale where we are investing in mitigation, and it's not something that we would like to do it for a year or two, the program period. This is something, a long-term program, which we would like to keep invested in and keep our focus on. We will continue to invest in risk mitigation because we know that the risk of glacial lakes is not going to go away. And we would very much look forward to your support and technical cooperation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vatsa, for this impressive insight. And with that, I give directly the word to Dr. Simon Allen for his brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What I want to focus on in my brief intervention here is really GLOF early warning systems and some of the challenges that we've encountered, some of the insights from our GLOF project in Central Asia. So that's glacial lake outburst floods in Central Asia. When I speak of early warning systems, I'm of course using the broad framing, so we have these 4 core underlying components of the warning system. So firstly, in terms of the risk knowledge component, so this is all the hazard mapping, the risk mapping, the information that feeds into the design of the warning system, where and how we do these warning systems. And Central Asia, perhaps more than any other mountain region, really shows just how rapidly some of these GLOF threats are increasing. You see an example, the bottom there, from Akpai Lake in Kyrgyzstan, where in less than 12 months we went from having no lake to having a lake of 300 meters or more in length. 1 or 2 days later, this lake outburst and affected a touristic region. Luckily, the authorities were onto this and they had actually closed a trekking route, so there was no loss of life. But particularly in Central Asia, a lot of permafrost, a lot of sediment. We see these lakes changing shape and growing very rapidly. So the South Lonak case is very much kind of the textbook Himalayan outburst case that we may think of, but we need to not forget these smaller lakes that can be equally problematic. We're seeing repeatedly in South America, in Nepal just 2 weeks ago, very small lakes, typically too small even to feature in some of our hazard assessments, are leading to big downstream impacts because you have so much loose sediment sitting around in these unstable, changing alpine environments. That sediment gets mobilized and you have this far greater downstream consequence. So what does this mean? Of course, we need to be repeatedly updating our risk assessments. Maybe a few years ago, we would have thought about doing these every 5 years, every 10 years. We now need to, on an annual basis, be reconsidering which are the dangerous lakes and where we need to focus. Equally, some of our international best practice certainly needs to be tailored to the regional context, bringing in some of this local science in terms of the way things are happening in those regions. And this is a two-way process, of course. What we're learning from the regions always feeds back into the international best practice. I want to also highlight here the importance of bringing in the local knowledge. Some of these, as I say, dangerous lakes may not be known or classified under our risk assessment schemes, but if you talk to the local people, they will tell you about these lakes. They may have experienced past outbursts from these lakes. So we don't tend to do a very good job of bringing this knowledge into the hazard assessment schemes. So moving on to the monitoring and warning component of the warning system. So this is the technical component of the system. What we've encountered, particularly in Central Asia, but I think it's valid elsewhere, is the challenge of balancing kind of the monitoring needs from an early warning system. So you don't need to have instruments installed in every single glacial lake to have a comprehensive warning system. You can strategically position your sensors downstream in the channels, in the river system, to actually have this comprehensive coverage. But there's obviously pros and cons there. There's trade-offs in terms of the warning times that need to be considered. But equally, a lot of the agencies that we work with, particularly the hydromet authorities, they have their existing mandates, they have their priorities, which may include the monitoring of lakes and glaciers. So if we want them to take long-term ownership and maintenance of these systems, we need to somehow compromise and have synergies with their existing programs. The last point in terms of the monitoring, we have to accept that the warning times are often too short in some cases. So we need to therefore be trying to move more towards the forecasting of these GLOF events and mudflow events. That's quite feasible when these events are triggered by rainfall or snowmelt, and that's often the case in Central Asia and also in the Himalayan context we see this. So we're moving gradually towards the prediction and the forecasting of GLOF events. In terms of the response capability, so this is all about defining clear institutional roles and responsibilities. In a complex region like Central Asia, where we work across 4 different countries, exactly how this works in each country is completely different. The structures in place, the existing risk response structures are quite different. So what we try to do is really take the best experiences from the different countries and transfer this experiences across the region. And one mechanism we have for that is an annual regional exchange workshop where we bring all these experts together with an international team and we develop protocols and things together with this expert group. Another key focus of the GLOF project has been the building of capacities with children and youth. We really see the young people as a gateway or a vehicle into the communities. So we go into the schools, we teach them how to prepare, how to respond to a mudflow or GLOF event, and that in turn, these children take that home to their families, and in this way we build capacities in the community. So we have a big focus on this. You see some of the material that's being produced. Of course, this is in local languages as well. And finally, in terms of the last mile of the early warning system, so this is how do we get the alert, how do we get the warning to the most vulnerable members of the community? There's been a lot of development of technology in this space. You see one example of a smartphone app at the bottom there, developed by Indian colleagues. This is great. This alerts you. It even guides you to a safe location, gives you a path to that location. But we have to accept that a lot of the regions we work in don't have good phone coverage that can be wiped out during storm events, etc. And obviously the elderly and some of the marginalised members of communities don't have access to this technology. So we need to address that problem. Also, the tourists are perhaps a group we don't think of so much as being vulnerable, but one of our pilot regions is a national park where we have up to 7,000 people coming on a nice summer day. They have their picnics directly on a GLOF outflow fan. So how do we reach those kind of people? Because they're coming from outside, they don't have experience with GLOFs, they don't know how to act. So in this case, we tend to revert to old-fashioned techniques. We're going to be installing sirens, loudspeakers, etc. in these high-risk touristic hotspots, and of course, providing signage so they can run to safety. So with that, it's a bit of a snapshot, but I hope I've just given you some flavour that early warning systems for GLOF certainly go well beyond the technical components. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Simon, for this substantive input. Now I pass the floor on to Miriam. Thank you.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, esteemed delegates, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. So, I will take you briefly back to Switzerland and then again out to the regional and the global level. So, I think what we can say is DRR in mountains, this is a Swiss priority. This is also due to the fact that 65% of our territory is covered by the Alps. And I'm coming back to this event that Ambassador Vicky has mentioned in his introductory words. And I think this picture speaks more than 1,000 words. It looks like a photo montage. It is what happened more or less exactly right now in 2 hours 1 week ago. So it's extremely recent. I think it shook us in Switzerland. It is so about a week ago. It's not a GLOF, this has to be said. It is due to a glacier, which there was a disintegrating mountain peak on top of it, and the weight of these rocks accumulated on the glacier finally made this glacier collapse. And within a fraction of a minute, this village that had been there for 600 years had been devastated and has disappeared. I was deeply moved, I think many of us here, not only by Switzerland's well-coordinated monitoring and warning system that Dr. Allen has just explained to us, and the way authorities, scientists, technicians and the civil society have worked together during this event, and also still are, since this is still unfolding, but also the overwhelming solidarity that we have seen demonstrated by the people who actually live in the valley. Everybody, luckily, everybody could be evacuated. People found shelter in the neighboring villages, and this was really a true sign that resilience begins with people. But of course, I would not like to, this is one event that happened. There are many others we could talk about today, and we have about some in India and other regions of the world. Globally, over 15 million people are at risk of glacier lake outburst floods, and more of half of them live in India, Pakistan, Peru, and China. And of course, if we think of other hazards in mountains, then this number would be much bigger. So some of our projects, so also for the Swiss Agency for Development Cooperation, DRR in mountains is a priority. It has been for quite some time, and we have been supporting various projects on DRR in mountains, and specifically also on GLOFs in the Himalayan region. We have heard about this, but also in the Andean region, we had another project, Glaciares, and in Central Asia. So I think this has also been demonstrated in this event that I have mentioned before in Blatten. Switzerland brings a lot of expertise in mountains, in managing natural hazards like floods, landslides, and avalanches in mountain areas, and applies a well-coordinated all-of-society approach. Why do we do this? We believe that investing in DRR enhances stability, peace and prosperity in fragile contexts. It reduces forced migration and disaster-linked poverty. And Swiss DRR cooperation also promotes science and precision and local ownership. And I think I would echo what Dr. Allen has said. It's really that the local communities all over the world, they're the first response, and they do bring a lot of knowledge in it. So the localization of our project is also very important to us. So how do we do this? So we work together with Swiss research institutions. Some of them and universities are present here on the panel today, and also with environmental engineering and consultancies and technology companies. These experts then work closely together with international partners, such as SDC, UNDP, or also ICIMOD, or then with different national and local governments. And they are supporting then the implementation of projects, or have also contributed, for example, to the national GLOF guidelines or the national program on GLOF risk mitigation that Dr. Watza has just mentioned and talked about to us. So this experience that we are gaining in this multi-stakeholder approach at the local level, we are then also scaling or sharing at the local level, but then also at the regional and national level and the global level. For example, we're sharing this through events like today. We are collaborating with expert networks, or we're also feeding learnings into the global policy dialogue, such as the UNFCCC processes or IPCC reports. So to conclude, I would like to focus on three aspects. So DRR processes must be inclusive. They are about people, as I've mentioned. Mountain communities' voices, perspectives, and knowledge are essential for building resilient communities. The second one is about collaboration. So Switzerland's approach to DRR in mountains applies an all-of-society approach to strengthen mountain and vulnerable populations. This also applies to our international engagement. And finally, scaling is also very important. The sharing of our knowledge through global cooperation. The Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation shares this expertise and innovation and contributes to a more secure future beyond 2030. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Before we open up for questions, let me introduce two other panelists. To my left, Natalia Kim, Professional Officer at the UNESCO Almaty Regional Office, who has extensive experience in GLOF risk management in Central Asia. And then to my far right, Christoph Hemmig, geologist at Geotest, a leading Swiss company offering interdisciplinary solutions in the areas of geosciences and natural hazards, both in Switzerland and globally. So with that, I would like to open for questions on your side. I personally have, of course, quite many of these questions, but to also have a bit of interaction and to see whether you have, for example, questions to the panelists based on their presentations, I would like to open up at this stage.
Good morning,
Pierre-Yves, you have a question?
Good morning, everyone. I have the microphone with myself, and I'm happy to come to share the microphone after the first question with you, for you to ask a question. But just to warm up a little bit, in today's world, which is fast-pacing, with an actuality who is always changing, with an incredible number of man-made disasters that we see in Europe, but also in Middle East, how do we keep the attentions on these major risk disaster that happened maybe with 100 years or at a really, really different pace of the society we are living here? What will be the approach of the expert today in the panel to be able to raise attention in a world that it's evolving in a different speed, different pace?
Thank you, Pierre, for this question. Maybe, I don't know who would like to take the floor. Dr. Batza, yeah?
Yeah, the first thing is the occurrences of frequent hazards that actually always bring our attention to the risks that are always present. It's not just a GLOF. There are many other climate hazards that are affecting the mountain region. We are experiencing them on a regular basis to how the people are getting affected in that area, how the remoteness actually increases, how the areas become more and more remote, how it also has cascading impacts. We have slope instability, continuous. We have also water-related issues, and flash floods are becoming a very, very serious issue, largely due to this. So the changing hazard escape in the mountains, the impact on the communities, and the increased isolation of the communities living in remote areas. These are some of the most important factors that would ask us to remain focused on the ever-present risks. The real challenge is how do we bring variety of resources, a diversity of resources to focus on that, because it's not just money, it's technology, it's people, it's experts. All those things need to come together, and doing this in a difficult area difficult terrain is always a challenge. This is the challenge that we are facing in all the states where we are developing state-specific GLOF risk reduction programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Other views on this one, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, just a brief comment. I think some of the other problems you mentioned, like in the Middle East, there's kind of a helplessness there from the layperson. I mean, what can we do except for protest and etc. But with the climate-related problems, I mean, there's hazards. We've actually got risk reduction strategies that we can actually do. So I think there's more motivation to actually get engaged and actually address these problems. And we've got the means, we've got the technology to actually do this. So I think that's the difference from my point of view. But.
Yes, why don't you pass on the mic to...
Thank you, Jeremy Veterval. I just wanted maybe your reflections on how some of the unique challenges of mountainous regions are reflected at the political level, especially in COP negotiations, because if you look at architectures around fund for responding for loss and damage, there's a lot of attention around SIDS and LDCs. And very often at the policy level, you really don't see that uniqueness of mountainous regions coming across. If you could just comment on some initiatives ongoing that could be supported.
Yeah, I think a good person to answer that question is Miriam.
Yes, thank you very much for this very important question. And that's, maybe I haven't mentioned it, but it's not a recent, so SDC specifically has been working on mountains and sustainable mountain development for a very long time. So one of our partners that we have had for a long time is ICIMOD. But right now I would like to, as one of them, we have many others, maybe mention one specific example. So we have one, right now, indicators are being developed for the global goal on adaptation. And there we've just had last week an exchange with the Swiss delegation who will be there at COP30 to develop indicators that, or to bring in indicators that do recognize the specific characteristics of mountains, and that these will be then reflected for this global goal on adaptation. That's one example. Another example is, I think it's not just a coincidence that also in the SDGs that are quite a while back, but in there mountains are specifically mentioned. This was another achievement by Swiss cooperation and the Swiss delegation to bring this in there. So wherever we can, and then we also are supporting or we bring ourselves into the UNFCCC processes, but also into IPCC reports and make sure that mountains are reflected in these reports. So on various levels. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you look at, you know, for example, where we work as SDCs, it's not a coincidence that it's often mountainous areas. And I think there's an emotional part of it. Those people who come from mountains know that that goes back to the early days of cooperation, where basically Swiss were also attracted to other mountainous areas. But then, of course, these days it's more an issue of expertise and also a political commitment that those countries with similar risk landscapes that they work together. Before I give you the floor, Dr. Watsa, I would like to ask Natalia, maybe from a Central Asian perspective, how do you bring political attention to that topic, and what you're focusing on?
Thank you. I just wanted to comment before you raise these questions to answer the questions from the audience. Actually, from Central Asia perspectives, I would say that the mountain agenda is getting more and more attention at the highest level. It's not like in other regions, in other mountainous regions. I understand your concern, but in Central Asia, actually, it took years for academic community, for development partners to sensitize national authorities on the importance of development of mountainous regions. But once the national authorities have this interest in their agenda, I must admit that this is the best way to bring this to the highest political level, and we see how it works. Like, for instance, Kyrgyzstan has adopted first their mountain agenda with 5-year action plan for development of mountainous regions, and look at the initiatives of Tajikistan, which is bringing the initiative of International Year of Glacier Preservations at the highest level. So, but that preceded years of, I would say, massaging and sensitizing authorities on these issues, and bringing together academic community, collecting their conclusions and bringing that first to local authorities, then to national central level. And this is not only done by UNESCO or development agencies. The largest role lays within the national academic community and national institutions, who bring this directly to their national authorities. But as I said, I think the key way for success in this issue is to make national authorities believe that this is important. And once they have this interest in mind, you can see the level where they can bring this to the agenda. And we see how it actually works, that such kind of initiatives are brought to UN level with the respective resolutions adopted. But it takes years. It's not even 5 years, but much more. I can say that, for instance, the Glacial Lake Outburst Floods project, about which Simon has presented, it's the first regional project addressing GLOFs in Central Asia, and it took us 5 years only to discuss the idea of importing such a project. But then you can see results. It's important just not to lose maybe your passion and hope when you promote this agenda for 5 and more years to bring it to the attention. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that perspective, and I definitely think you're right. I mean, I was like my Indian colleague very early on in the international DRR agenda, and you see how much time it takes now to basically bring the topic not only at the political level, but then also a cross-sectoral approach, no, to have an integrated approach to DRR. But you wanted to take the floor, no?
Yeah, just one thing. The real challenge comes not from the political class, the attention of the political class. They are very much acutely aware of the risks and vulnerabilities. The actual pressure comes through the demography. If you look at the coastal areas, they are heavily populated. If you look at the flood basins, they are heavily populated. Mountain areas, the population is very, very thin. So it does not translate itself into a very strong political demand the way you can see it in other areas. But in one respect, you are right. Whatever literature I have seen related to FRLD, there is no mention of the mountain hazards generally. So, in that respect, it is the attention is missing. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we pass on a little bit on the next subject, and I would like to ask a question to Dr. Hemming. Based on your experience also with the Swiss-Indo cooperation, what are the key lessons if we look at the future in terms of the cooperation? If I listen to Dr. Vatsa, all the challenges with the GLOFs and the huge scale, what can we learn from the past project?
Thanks for these questions. And I think I can continue with this people-centered local approach we've been talking before. I think that's really a key lesson also learned in Sikkim. So it's not just implementing technology like monitoring stations. you have to co-develop the technology together with the locals so they can accept it. So we learned in Sikkim some of these lakes, for instance, they are sacred. So you have to know and respect local beliefs to make really sustainable installations in the end. So for us as engineers and geologists, so we have to think out of the box and add this social component as well. So this is a really key lesson for me to have this social acceptance and participatory approaches together with engineering. That's one of a key lesson. Then another one is flexibility and time. So Natalia also told a lot of time is needed. So that's also true in Sikkim. So to develop such projects and make them fly and efficient, so you need a lot of time and flexibility. And that is sometimes in conflict actually with local weather conditions. So in such high elevated mountains, the time window is very, very short to implement techniques. And so that's a huge challenge and also a lessons learned giveaway. So proactive planning with multi-stakeholders is very, very important at all levels.
Thank you. To move on, also a little bit on the experience, I would like to ask Miriam, based on your experience also with STC, but also in ICIMOD, what are best practices? You know, what are good examples of dealing with this? Of projects where we dealt with this glacier lakes outburst flood risks.
Good examples. I mean, I've mentioned the projects we have. We have the one on India, which we have not talked a lot about. And we have also in Central Asia, that's another program we have called Chromo Adapt, which is being and the results of this project, for example. And I would like to come back also a little bit to the question, what do we do to make this heard, to make this known? It has been shared at the Global Conference for Glacier Conservation last week, I'm sorry, but actually yesterday at the press conference and also at the opening, the UN DSG, for those who have heard it, has very much talked also about the Glacier Conference. So I think it resonated, and I think other examples, as I've mentioned in Peru or in the Andean region, we've had the Glaciares project. There, through this project and experience, we could also contribute to then build up structures in these countries to deal with these hazards and risks. And I think that is a very important lesson also. While these events are very complex and they differ from site to site, what can then be scaled and shared is really the institutional level, the coordination mechanisms and robust structures. And this is something that from one region to another we can share. Of course, it then needs to be readjusted to the local level, but this is something, and I think that is the beauty also of it, that we do work in various regions and that we can bring these experiences together. And I would also like to mention that, and that's, I think, is another good example, is that many of our experts who are working in one project, they also work in another one. And so there is really this cross-fertilization between the different projects and the learnings from each other. And then I think also it goes, there's this South-South exchange, as we call it, but also I think as Switzerland, we can learn from these experiences we have in the countries and bring then this knowledge back home.
Thank you, Miriam. I look into the public. Are there questions to the panelists at this stage? Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering, given the importance that you also mentioned before of working with communities, the acceptance of communities and the trust they give to these type of projects, how do you deal with the speed of these changes? Because of course we also talk about local and traditional knowledge, and there's sometimes some, let's say, different two types of speeds, let's say, and also how do you deal with the priority that communities can give to these projects, because of course sometimes there are also other socioeconomic aspects on the field that can hinder sometimes the development of these initiatives.
Thank you for the question. I think there's one for Natalia and Dr. Vatsa maybe, how you tackle this issue of the balance between doing it together with the local communities, on the other hand, the speed.
Please go ahead.
Well, it's a race against time, so I think that's clear, and speed is important. And I think, from my perspective, what I learned in Sikkim, if you have contacts really on a local, regional level in the government of Sikkim, like SDC did, so we really could turn the wheel a bit faster because it was priority on the political table in that local government. That's what I learned in that project. So it goes through people. You have to have people that are interested, that really see the benefit. And I think once you gain them, it's true for everywhere in the world, I think you really can move faster ahead. So you need to light that candle.
The most significant part of the challenge lies in bringing together a whole lot of stakeholders in that area. Even if you miss out one of them, you will not be able to succeed. Say, for example, in Sikkim, the border police, the ITBP, Indo-Tibet border police, they are one of the most important presence. And if you do not get their support, it would be very difficult to get anything accomplished, because when nobody goes to any of these glacial lakes, they are patrolling, they can always visit, they can always check the equipment. You always need to work with the communities, and communities generally are, it's not that they are very opposed to this, they understand the risks. You need to have communications, but you need to have communications on a continuous basis. Look at Nepal and Bhutan. Both the countries have done a very good amount of work on GLOF risk reduction. In Nepal, it is Imza Lake. In Bhutan, it is Thartharmi Lake. In both the lakes, the downstream communities were always consulted, and in both the cases, the downstream communities extended maximum cooperation for risk reduction. So it's not difficult, but you need to be inclusive about it, and humble about it. You should always indicate the enormity of the enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you. I look at maybe Simon or Natalia.
Yeah, I think between us we can share some experience from GLOFCA. We have 4 pilot communities that we're doing early warning systems with there. And when we went to these communities at the start of the project, we did consultations, etc. GLOFs were not their main problem. That was very clear. In all 4 of these communities, GLOFs were not their main problem. They talked about landslides, mud flows, too many sheep. That's true. It's a completely... So we had to reflect and we had to modify some of our plans. So rather than framing it as a GLOF project in one of our pilot regions, we put it more in the broader perspective of mud flows, landslides, and these kind of things. So you've got to be ready to adapt what you may have already preconceived. We're going to be your outputs to actually what the community need and what they expect. And that's also a message to the funding donors. We're kind of locked into these log frames sometime, and we kind of need that flexibility to actually adjust what we're going to do.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add maybe unpopular truth is that for us in Central Asia, I must admit it is not an easy task to ensure meaningful and active local engagement, because partially maybe because of the dominance of top-down governance approach, and partially because it's not so easy to actively engage local communities in activities which do not provide immediate benefits or results, rather aim at some longer-term resilience. So it takes a lot of time for us, again, to simply work at awareness-raising level. And it's, for us, the most helpful part was that the national entities and local players, they were instrumental in delivering this message to local communities, because we don't speak their language. And I'm talking not about language like English, Russian. I'm talking about the way that we speak with some different terminology, not really understandable for local communities. And this is where local partners really saves our lives. But again, it's really not an easy task, at least from our perspective, but some experience we already have. And it's important that it takes, I would say we're not the speedy ones in this issue, and that's why it's important to adopt and be flexible enough to change your implementation strategy if you want to address the community's needs in full.
Very interesting point. Before we slowly wrap up this panel, I would like to address one issue to our panelists, and this is around the collaboration, international collaboration, whether it's cross-border or international collaboration, like in this fora. I would like to have your thoughts on, given the huge challenges that we have and in this area, and given the speed of, especially of the melting of the glacier and the permafrost, what can we do to scale things up and to improve cooperation among countries? To whom can I give the floor? Maybe to Miriam first.
Big question. No, I think, well, we can, on the one hand, continue what we're doing, that we really are sharing, that we're going out, and I think this global platform is one of the steps to really share, to share the experience. That is one way. Then another way we can do this, or the Glacier Conference and other conferences, and then also that it is covered by the media, that people understand to I think explaining what we're doing and why this is important. To also, for example, in Switzerland, to people to explain them what Switzerland's expertise is and how we can bring this out and share, and how this also then contributes to global stability and security. I think that's an important part is the narrative we have. And then as SDC or as Switzerland, we sit in various boards of global funds, for example, the Green Climate Fund, the GEF, but also the Santiago Network. And there we can also, I think, bring in this experience. And if, for instance, there is a big program and we could somehow bring this learning and share this and then influence these programs, then we also have a huge leverage effect. And then also in our the bilateral or our relationships to the countries we are present in and where we work with them, so to actually share this experience. I think these are a few pathways how we could scale up and collaborate and share this experience.
Thank you. Maybe Christoph, your thoughts?
Yes, maybe one on this transboundary cross-border approach I would like to mention. And I think it's important because natural hazard they don't respect borders at all. We could also see that in the GLOF event in Sikkim from October 2023, where the flood was not only observed and damaged areas in northern Sikkim, but also hundreds of kilometers far away in the flatlands of Bangladesh. Actually, the flood could be observed. So that means we need to think, talking about GLOFs, not on borders, but on a catchment area scale. When also talking about monitoring and so on. And at the moment, we do have gaps in hazard maps, for instance. And so I think we need a more harmonized approach to validate these maps, process modeling, and so on. I think that's something we can do. And also to have more open shared data, for instance. So with monitoring, we can have platforms available for data available for several stakeholders. I think that's our ways to enhance that collaboration among countries and areas on a regional scale.
Thank you. Maybe Simon, you?
Yeah, I just want to pick up on one point that was made earlier, that this transfer, the scaling, this collaboration, it's not just north-south, it's also south-north. And I think if we look at the Bluton disaster of last week, that shows this. I mean, the reason there's several Swiss experts that know all about these glacier failures is because 20 years ago they worked in the Caucasus with Russian colleagues. So they knew about these events from what they've seen elsewhere. And more recently in Central Asia, several colleagues have been studying these glacier failures in Central Asia. So that knowledge, those modelling approaches, they feed back to actually how we do the hazard and risk assessment here in Switzerland. And just one other very brief point, I mean, we shouldn't get too obsessed with kind of scaling of the technical solutions. I think a lot of the scaling is also about the response side of things. And I think, again, with Bluton, a lot can be scaled from that back to the Himalayan region in Central Asia, where, I mean, if that kind of event was to happen there, it would be another Chamoli or Langtang event, because the precursory movement would not have been seen, those people would not have been evacuated. I could say that with some certainty. So what happened in Bluton is a tragedy, but we need to take something from that and really learn, take that best practice in terms of the response strategy of the authorities, how they interacted with the communities, and actually try and apply some of that in some of our more vulnerable mountain regions.
Thank you. Natalia.
Yeah, I can only add maybe one point. What we have observed from our projects is that another way to enhance collaboration might be common learning platforms. And by this, I mean joint capacity building initiatives. We've seen how it was positively affecting GLOF cooperation in Central Asian countries. So through this joint trainings and capacity building initiatives, but also by bringing international expertise to Central Asia, it also, we've seen the results, how this can sparkle some joint studies, joint ideas for potential collaboration. And we actually see how these common learning platforms help to kind of build confidence and build trust between these countries, and then it can lay ground for more in-depth cooperation and more robust initiatives.
Thank you, Natalia. And Dr. Watzer, maybe your reflections on,
thank you.
cooperation.
I think this is an area where we are getting more and more knowledge, more and more understanding, and I think as we improve our knowledge, I think the international cooperation is extremely essential. I will just refer to some of the important aspects. Risk assessment. How do we assess the risks? At what speed the glaciers are melting? How the water is accumulating? What do the bathymetric surveys say? How is the formation of the moraines, and at what stage, how should we classify the risks? within the, as I mentioned in my presentation, there are at least 5 agencies within the country. All of them have their own distinct approaches to risk assessment. That needs to be actually calibrated. We need to synthesize, and so this kind of work needs to be done nationally, internationally, so that we have some good, robust method of assessing risks. I should also talk about the instrumentation. How important is the instrumentation? How difficult it is to carry the instruments to all those areas. And when we look at this scale, if it were 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 lakes, perhaps it would have been so easy. We are looking at hundreds of lakes. We should also talk about mitigation. How should we go about mitigation? How are we going to siphon the water? How should we lower the lake? And for that, different kinds of technologies are available, but we also need to look at the feasibility of all the mitigation methods. All these things need to be evaluated, reviewed very carefully, and all these steps require a considerable amount of scientific exchange. So this is a full-time pursuit of knowledge and research and action, which involves which asks for all the agencies to come together and work continuously. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that was almost a very good conclusion. It is a team effort to summarize it. But with that now, my task is to briefly summarize the panel, which is of course a difficult one, but I will try before we then conclude. I think listening to all the contributions, it's obviously crucial that we give attention to the subject, including political attention. We heard that this is not always obvious and takes time, but large events obviously help to get the attention of the political level to these issues. But we also heard that it is important to explain well what the risks are and what we try to achieve. Another element is that it is important that we move fast on the issue. Climate change is real, or at least what's very real is the melting of the glaciers and with all the permafrost and with all its effects. So science-based and immediate action is necessary. Then what also came up several times is that it needs an integrated risk management approach at all levels of government. It's crucial to bring the stakeholders together, which is not always easy. But this integrated risk management governance is very important. It is on one hand very specific, like with the GLOFs, but as soon as you then talk to a community, then are many other risks also very relevant. Then we heard thirdly that cooperation is important. On one hand, to share scientific evidence, but also data. We also heard that cross-border cooperation in certain areas is very important. And I think it is also an opportunity based on my experience, because it's not a political cooperation. We can cooperate between countries despite geopolitical maybe differences. Then a fourth point that I would like to stress is the importance of local communities. We need to involve them. They need to understand what the risks are and what actions have to be taken. be it based on warnings or forecasts, that they know if they have to evacuate or not. They also know often the areas much better than international experts, so it's important to involve the local communities. And finally, last but not least, this global exchange, be it between practitioners, policymakers, or the science community is very important, given the challenges that we have. And in that sense, again, thank you very much for being here with us over this lunchtime. For those who probably want to have lunch or over in the main building, there's lunch or coffee. And of course, we also would like to invite you to come to the Swiss Innovation Stand at the main building, where we have several activities, including Swiss chocolate. So with that, thank you very much, and have a good afternoon and a good conference. Thank you.